So we got some student ministry directors coming. Who do you think is going to be the first person to pull out their cell phone?
I'd say Dakota Draper.
Dakota Draper.
Who do you think?
Stacy Tudor.
So who do you think like the first person to say like, hey, what are we supposed to be doing?
Jen.
And who do you think the first person to like sit down without any instruction is going to be?
Eastside, Brian Kramer.
Brian Kramer. See that back stool right there?
Yeah.
Who would your money be on to take that spot? What? I'm going to go with Abby.
Okay. I'm going to go with Evan Maines.
Oh, yeah.
What's up, bro?
Are we also sitting right here?
Are we piling on?
Yeah.
Did your shirt say
All on
that?
left. Are we all on couches?
I'm gonna get 2 seats.
Oh, here.
Do we get word?
Should I sit in a high top? Can I get...
Guys, we've all been talking, sharing part of our stories, and most of you guys know my story. And but a big part of it for me is when I really started to first walk out my faith and come to know Christ. I had to do this whole reset of just realizing that our culture really praises sex in an unhealthy way and is pretty obsessed with it. And I mean, I guess it's not a surprise. Like when you read the Bible, God talks about creating sex and it being a good thing. So how do you feel like the line gets blurred between being a good thing that God created and being overly obsessed with it the way our culture is sometimes?
It's selling us on the idea that we can have connection.
Yeah.
Right? Really, at the deepest level, sex and connection go together. And I think more than anything, like as people, we long for connection.
Yeah.
And so when that's offered and put out to us in images or whatever it is, like we want that. We want something that is gonna connect with us on a deeper level. And I think our culture sold us on, well, sex is that.
Yeah, especially when it's so hard to feel like connected to maybe the people around you in your normal life. Like it's an easier way to feel that connection if it's easy accessible.
What about the pressure of feeling like you have to post revealing pictures to get likes, to get followers, to, you know, build a self-image that may be unhealthy online?
Yeah, it's like super frustrating. Like when you do look at the people that are popular on Instagram, or like are the famous actresses or whoever, even sport players these days. I feel like they're the most popular people, and they're the ones that are posting the most like revealing and the most inappropriate things. And so I feel like because those are the people in the forefront, those are the people that we like their picture, we comment on their picture, we see their stuff all the time. When we see those things and we see how popular and how good their life looks, I feel like we think, I need to do the same thing.
In my story, it's way less about connection and way more about acceptance, actually. Like in putting things like that out about myself before I knew what God had planned for my body, it was much more about getting people, particularly guys, to accept me than it was even about connecting them. Actually, I'd say like it was a way for me to be defensive and keep a distance.
Great.
Well, and something is just so broken, right? When we feel like we have to get likes by posting certain pictures or like give in to the pressure to send photos to people, like something is so broken. Like, and I think what's broken is we tie up our value in that acceptance. And like, if I can get this person to love me in this way, then I'm accepted, or like I'm achieving the connection that I so desperately want deep down, and the love that I want so desperately. And I'm just like, man, it's so broken when girls feel like their value is tied up into like what they can do for a guy, but and vice versa, right?
Yeah.
Guys, we're not immune to this either. Like, girls will send stuff to guys, and I think our culture's gotten to a point where girls think that they have to do that if they want to initiate,
like without even being asked.
with a guy. Yeah.
I think it's fair to say that like we're growing up in like my generation, this generation, like we're growing up in the loneliest generation that has been the wedge of technology, the wedge of social media, the wedge of pornography, the wedge of those kind of artificial things is in our lives, and it's creating this rift to where we found as a culture that sex is obviously something that sells, as you were just saying, and it's like as a marketer, like if I'm trying to make a movie, I'm trying to think how can I market this movie. Sex drive is something that everyone has, they have, like it's innately built into the wiring of everyone. So if I'm a marketer and I know that, you know, it's such a wide customer range that I can now talk to and try and sell something to. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, it sounds kind of cynical, but they know. Like, hey, if I want to get your attention, I can use sex to do that.
Yeah.
I think part of our culture that, like, over time, and we're, like you said earlier, we're living in it. Like, we're living in this culture that is just obsessed with sex, music, movies, YouTube, like everything. It's everywhere. We've like learned how to not respect our own bodies. We as individuals have to respect ourselves in a way that is higher than what our culture says. So that if we respect ourselves, we can do that. We can respect other people around us.
When do you choose to unfollow someone who's constantly feeling like negative images on your social feed?
I don't know. I think it depends on your level of friendship. Like, if it's someone who's going to be hurt by you unfollowing them, then you probably should be having a conversation with them about
That's
that.
good.
Like,
Yeah.
hey, this is how this picture makes me feel. Like, I guarantee people aren't being upfront and honest to them about how they're feeling when they look at that picture, you know? And so being that friend to them, going, hey, this is what this is the reality of what that picture is doing, I think would speak a lot.
One of my checks is like, am I still thinking about it a couple hours later? If I'm still thinking about something a couple hours later, sometimes that's great. Like, oh, that was so impactful and that was good. And like, you know, if it's like positive quote. But if I'm still thinking of a half-naked picture of somebody hours later, like, I need to unfollow. Like, that's just not good for me. And to Stacey's point, that's not good for my relationship with that person. And so I probably need to unfollow.
Or even if you're not thinking about it a couple hours later, but you go back. Like, when you get back on Instagram, you're going, oh, I wonder if they're going to post a picture.
Yeah.
Check back in.
So I'm going to read the scripture to you guys and then be thinking about how this might apply to our conversation today and like the dangers of falling into a culture that's obsessed with sex. And it says, and now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise.
So the verse, the two words that stood out to me were true and lovely. How often does culture redefine what's true and lovely, right? Like, this is hot right now, and this is what makes a person attractive. No, it's this actually. No, actually it's this now. And it feels like, man, every, I don't know if it's 6 months, it feels like it's actually faster than that. Like, we're like swiveling to like keep up with what is hot. And like, that's not, God tells us very clearly what is true and what is lovely. And he tells us his design for our body and for sex. And so for me, this verse is just like comforting. Like, man, I can just focus on what God says about it. And that is more long lasting and more promising because culture is just going to constantly be changing and I'm going to be constantly having to keep up and it feels impossible.
I think if we fall into what culture is selling, what culture's telling us, the narrative that culture's writing, it promotes, I think, a lot more numbness in our life. Like a way to go about life, just kind of consuming it, but not really experiencing it. And I know in line with God's plan and in line with like the life that God has made for us and given us, I mean, there is a lot of feeling. There's a lot of experience. There's a lot of joy, the hills and the valleys that come with that. Like, I would much rather get to experience that, like the fullness of the day.
I think I was probably 16 or 17 before I ever even mentioned or had any of these kind of real vulnerable conversations with a person. I think that just being bold in our own lives and realizing that we're worth talking to people about those things is important. And I think being bold in other people's lives and being truthful to other people is really important because we need each other in this fight. We need each other in this fight against a sex obsessed culture because it can take us over and cause us to feel like there's not a way out.
Josh, come on! Josh!
Doesn't laugh.
Cracking up right now, guys. The best we got.